Okay, thank you all for attending. This is the judge training for the LA FLL region for the 2015 season. My name is Rick Sisk. I'm the Regional Judge Advisor. I'm out here in Riverside and glad to be working with the LA area this year. I have several years of FLL judging. I've judged quite a bit in the Southern California region, including at the championship at Legoland for several years. So what we're going to go over today is basically everything you need to know to be an effective judge for an FLL tournament. I see we still got a couple people just now joining, so I'm going to give it a minute so that everybody gets in from the beginning. All right, so you might be wondering, what are you getting into as an FLL judge? Some of you probably had experience and have judged in the past for FLL. Some of you, this might be your first time judging. And being a judge is a pretty exciting role because you basically get to see the kids at their best. They come into the judging room and do their best to tell you all the stuff that they've been working on for the last 8 weeks. They've been building robots, working on projects, studying and practicing their core values, and they're eager to tell you about it. And you'll see some pretty amazing kids, anywhere from the age 19 all the way up to 14 years old. And you'll swear these guys are in college and have PhDs. They're so smart. As a judge, you have several roles that you play. Not only are you there to interview the kids, but you're an investigator to find out. You'll be asking the kids questions about what they've done with their robot or how they've looked into the backgrounds on their project or how they've practiced their core values. You'll also be a reporter because you'll be coming back to the judging room for deliberations, and it's up to you to represent the teams that you've interviewed. There'll be a deliberation process where you'll be discussing with the other judges which teams deserve which awards, and you advocate for the teams, based on what they've presented to you. And you're also an ambassador, and what I mean by that is you may be the first time one of these students have met an engineer in person, or a scientist or a teacher or whatever your background is. So you are kind of representing what they're aspiring to be whenever they grow up and get out of school. So you're kind of an ambassador to the STEM world that's actually in place and in action. And you are what these kids are going to be inspiring to be, so we'd like to give them a good impression. Okay, asked to use the full screen mode. Let me see if I can do that. How about this? There we go. Okay, so what should you bring whenever you come to judge? Wear business casual clothes. So like I said, you're an ambassador, so you want to look good in front of the kids. Make sure you have some good writing material, notebook, pen. I like to bring several sheets of note paper and something to write with. And you also need a timekeeping device, such as a cell phone or a watch. Between you and your partner in the judging room, it'll be up to you to time the sessions with the students. So just make sure you have some sort of timekeeping device. Just about everybody has a clock on their cell phone anymore. A typical day at a tournament, this is what you'll probably encounter, although the tournaments may vary. And you'll want to check with your tournament director to get a schedule for the day. So it starts pretty early in the morning, about 7 a.m. You should be there to check in as a volunteer, and then find your judge advisor and introduce yourself. So at the tournament, there's several key volunteers that are really important to you. Probably the most important is your judge advisor. The judge advisor is there to help facilitate the judging process, and they're kind of your leader for the day. Also, the next important person is the tournament director, but usually the judge advisor will be the one directly interfacing with the tournament director. But go ahead and introduce yourself to the tournament director. They may want to know your name and your background because they may introduce you during opening ceremonies or at the end during award ceremonies. There usually be breakfast there for volunteers, could be anything from a continental breakfast, some pastries and orange juice, coffee. So go ahead and get yourself some food in the morning, and then your judge advisor will also probably want to do a quick recap training with you before opening ceremonies. But they can give you all the specifics of what they want to do with you in the morning. 8:30 a.m. is when opening ceremonies begins. Oh, another thing you probably want to do is find where your judging room is going to be. So each area that a judge is going to judge in, core values, project, or robot design, will have a judging room where they'll interview the kids. So make sure you find which room you're going to be in. At 8:30 a.m. is opening ceremonies. Sometimes there's a guest speaker. The tournament director will talk to the audience and the teams, and usually they'll like you to be there so that they can introduce you as the judges. Again, your judge advisor will let you know exactly where you need to be and when. As soon as opening ceremonies are over, that's when the judging begins, and you need to be in your judging rooms as soon as the judging is supposed to start. You'll probably have a team waiting for you. So make sure make sure you're in your judging rooms and ready to go by as soon as opening ceremonies are over. Between 9 a.m. and noon will be all the judging sessions. This is where you'll interview the teams, evaluate the teams, write comments on the rubrics, take notes, and rank the teams in order of highest to lowest ranking for the team. So you'll be pretty busy between 9 a.m. and noon, constantly interviewing teams, and it'd be like a 10-minute interview process followed by a 10-minute between teams where you can write notes. At lunchtime, your interviews should be complete by lunchtime. There may be some tournaments. This is all kind of based on a 24-team tournament. I noticed that we had some tournaments that are few more than 24 teams, so maybe you might go to 12:30 before you get your lunch break. But you'll have a schedule from your judge advisor that tells you, exactly when to expect judging to start in lunch. During your lunch break, if there is more than one judging team, for example, if there's 2 sets of core value judges and 2 sets of project judges and 2 sets of robot design judges, during lunch you'd like to work with the other judges and rank sort your teams in that judging area. And what I mean by that is if there's 24 teams and 2 sets of core value judges, one set of judges has interviewed 12 teams and the other set of judges has interviewed the other 12 teams. Between those 2 sets of core value judges, you now need to rank the entire set of 24 teams from top to bottom. Okay, so during the interview process, and we'll see this in a little bit, I'll kind of go over this in a little bit more detail, but during the interview process you've been ranking your teams, and now you just need to combine your rankings with the other judges' rankings. By 1 p.m. deliberations should start. There'll be a judging room that's set aside just for judges and the judge advisor to deliberate and determine which teams get which awards. Most likely this is where your lunch will also take place. Again, your judge advisor will let you know. So the deliberation process, again, is where between core values, project, robot design, and the Champions Awards, you guys will determine, you and the judge advisor will determine who gets which awards. And by 3 p.m. you should be complete with the deliberation should be complete. So by that time you should have a pretty good idea of who you think the top 2 or 3 teams are in each category. You're probably looking at 1 or 2 teams that are floating to the top in all categories, and those are your champion caliber teams. But you do have to wait for the competition rounds to finish, because the scores that they're ranking on the robot performance out on the tables is important for who can be a champion. So when the competition rounds finish, the scores and the ranking on the robot performance will be delivered to the judge advisor, And at that point, you guys can now decide who's going to be your champion teams. You may have to fill in some spots that empty as the teams kind of go up in rank, and figure out who the number 1 and 2 are in each of the categories, and also identify a judging award and then you'll have to determine who will be the teams that are advancing on to championship. After deliberations and all the awards are decided, award ceremonies, so all the judges go back out to the front, and they'll give out the awards to the teams. The teams like to come up and high-five the judges. It's a great time to, kind of give the kids congratulations as you high-five them. And then hopefully by 4 o'clock we're all done and everybody can go home. So that's a typical day for a judge at a FLL tournament. All right. I'm going to deviate here just for a second. Let me I realize there's a screen I wanted on here that I missed. All right. Let me go through the awards real quick. There's Robot Performance Awards. These are determined on the field of play. So basically it's the highest. The teams play 3 rounds of tournaments. They get a score based on how many missions they complete, and they take the highest score out of those 3 plays, and then they're ranked by their highest score. So you'll have a first place that has the most points and a last place that has the least amount of points. The Champion Awards are the top overall teams. They're strong in every category, and they also have to be in the top 40% of robot performance, because we want teams that are, not only are they good at presenting to judges, but their robot also performs on the field. And 9 times out of 10, the teams that float to the top that are strong in all the categories are also in the top 40% of robot performance. Then there's the Core Values, Project, and Robot Design Awards. These are all based on the team interviews. So this is the work that you're doing between at 9 and noon. You're interviewing the teams to figure out who's the number 1 and number 2 place in these 3 areas. There's also a Judges Award, and this is kind of where you guys get to have a little bit of freedom and decide what this award is for. Oftentimes it's a team that has ranked high in several of the different categories, but they just didn't get high enough to get an award. Maybe there's some special circumstances that the team was particularly gracious and professional at the competition, and maybe you want to award that. This is the award that you can use to call out a particular team that hasn't won another awards. There's a Volunteer Award, and this is completely determined by the tournament director. Judges have nothing to do with this award. I just let you know for completeness. And then there's teams that will advance to the regional championship. So these aren't really awards, but the judges and the judge advisor do decide which teams will advance, and your judge advisor will know how many teams are advancing from each competition. We like to do something called Share the Wealth, which means 1 award per team. So, if a team's won first place in core value, you also don't want to give them a second place in project or another first place in robot design. We like to spread that wealth among as many teams as possible, so as many teams as possible can go home with some sort of award. Where this does not apply is the Robot Performance Award and the Volunteer Award. So a team can be the number 1 robot performer of the day and also win a Core Values Award or a Champion Award. Okay, in that case, they've come home with 2 trophies. And then, of course, Volunteer Award has nothing to do with the teams themselves. Well, it usually doesn't have anything to do with the teams themselves. It's probably an adult that's helped out or a coach that's been very helpful during the year. And one thing we do have to note is that any teams or coaches that demonstrate an egregious disregard for core values will be disqualified from winning any awards. And what I mean by this is it needs to be, the word egregious is important. Okay, it's not going to be some minor minor demonstration of not having core values, maybe somebody gets upset and yells at another person or something. We're talking about, fighting on the field or cheating or something that's egregious. And this kind of information should come to the judge advisor, and the judge advisor should use this information during deliberation to let you know if a team's been disqualified for awards. And that means any awards too. So, robot performance, championship, core values, judges award. So in the years that I've been judging, I haven't seen this happen yet. So just kind of keep that in mind. Also be very careful as judges. If somebody comes up and wants to talk to you about something that they've seen regarding a team of core values, ask them to talk to the judge advisor. I'd rather have that kind of information be filtered through the judge advisor, and the judge advisor determine whether or how it should be applied. All right, so let's go back to our judge's presentation, and let's talk about the judging process. This is what you're going to be doing for the majority of the day, for the 3 hours between opening ceremonies and lunch. You'll be working in teams of 2. So in every judging room, there'll be two judges. Like, for example, 2 core value judges will be in a room, 2 project judges will be in a room, 2 robot design judges will be in a room. So you'll be working with another judge, and we try to team up. I've asked the judge advisors to try to team up rookie judges with experienced judges, just so that we don't have 2 rookie judges in the room together. Not that 2 rookie judges can do the interview process, because we'll take you through that process, and you'll see that it's kind of a format to it that even a first-timer can follow. But an experienced judge knows some of the questions that can be asked, that can get right down to the heart of what's being asked for on the rubric. You'll have 10 minutes with the team, and then 10 minutes between teams to add comments to the rubrics. So the 10 minutes with the teams is pretty hard and fast. We like to make sure that every team gets the same amount of judging time, and so if they start and end at that 10-minute point, then we know that every team is getting an equal amount of time with the judges. Okay. If you start getting behind schedule, the way to catch up on the schedule is to take away from the 10 minutes you have between teams, and that's your 10 minutes to write comments and rubrics. And you'll find out pretty quickly that you like to have that full 10 minutes to write your comments on the rubrics. So do your best to stay on schedule, and then the teams get their 10 minutes, and then you'll also get your 10 minutes between teams to add comments. Okay. On the rubrics that we'll get to in here in just a minute, you'll see that there's space for comments on those rubrics. Teams live and die by these comments on those rubrics. Trust me, I'm a coach on the FLL team, and as soon as we get back from our competition, we pull out those rubrics and we study the notes that the judges write on there, and we learn how to improve our team from those comments. So try to keep it constructive. There are ways to tell teams that they need to improve in certain areas. Maybe, for example, in robot design, they don't put enough comments in their code. So you can say, code looks great, but try adding more comments next time, and then that gives them an idea where they were a little bit weak, and they can help. And don't be afraid to praise on those comments either. If they did if they're very creative on their project presentation, let them know that. And that way they'll know to continue that type of project presentation the next time. And remember, so those rubrics do go back to teams, and those teams do read it. So the rubrics are not the place for you to take notes. The rubrics are for you to communicate back to the teams. Give me just 1 second. I'm trying to read Tony's comment here. Okay. All right. Now I said also bring notebooks along and some scratch paper. So take good notes during that interview process, because remember, I told you that you're an ambassador, so you'll be going back into the judge's deliberation room, and you'll be working with the other judges to convince them why your particular team should be first in project rather than maybe first in core values. So you'll be debating back and forth with the other judges to know why your team should be first in the area that you interviewed them. So you need to have good notes in order to be able to present facts during that deliberation. I will make a copy of the PowerPoint available after this interview, after this training. I'll make sure to send that out to everybody. Also, whenever you take your notes, make a kind of block out the paper where you're writing the notes, draw a line above it and below it so you don't mix the notes up with between teams. Also include the team number and the name whenever you start writing your notes. After you've interviewed 12 teams and you get back into the deliberation room, that team you interviewed at 9 o'clock in the morning is going to be a blur. So trust me, you may think that you'll remember those 12 teams, but you won't. And you'll have to rely on your notes. So include the team name and number on your notes, and then take good notes. In a minute, whenever you take a look at the rubrics, you'll see that there's several different categories or several different areas where you'll be evaluating the team. Whenever you have your question period during the interviewing process, you want to kind of ask open-ended questions that are relevant to the rubrics. So take a look at the rubrics ahead of time and kind of think of what kind of questions you would ask, and try to avoid yes and no questions. Try to ask questions that will lead the team to tell you more information. And then oftentimes you can drive your next question off of what they've told you, so it kind of has a feedback to you, so you can continue down a particular line of questioning. After each interview, you want to rank your teams. I'm going to show you one method of ranking teams. We call it the tick mark method. There's a couple other methods of ranking teams. Up to you to decide which way you want to do it, whichever way you're comfortable with. And no pluses or minuses on different methods. Just use what you're comfortable with. I'll show you a couple. And again, key to a good judging process is to stay on time. The teams will be at your judging room when they're supposed to be there. They have their schedules. They've done this before. They know when to be at the judging rooms. Oftentimes the tournaments will have judge assistants that will make sure that the teams are at your room at the appropriate time. Also, you can politely guide the conversation if necessary. And what I mean by this is you might ask a team a question, and they may want to talk about a particular point after you've gotten the information you need out of it. So you can always use questions to kind of guide the question or get them back on point. They only have 10 minutes with you to get across a lot of information, and the teams know that they need to be efficient, but some of the younger teams may just think that they want to spend 5 minutes telling you about why they used a light sensor on their robot, and really all you need to know is that they used the sensor, how they used it, and then you need to move on to other things. So between you and the team, just keep the conversation moving. Make sure you always have some extra questions on hand, because the team may do just the opposite. They may answer a question very quickly and there's an uncomfortable silence. So always have a couple questions in your back pocket that you can pull out and toss to the team. Also make sure that whatever happens in the judging room stays in the judging room. So same rules as Las Vegas. Whatever happens there stays there. We don't want judges to be walking back and forth to the bathroom just because, hey, do you see, this team did really good, this team did, needed help here. These kids have big ears and they like to listen to what you guys say, and we'd like them to get their feedback from the judges on the rubrics and not from what judges might say out in the open. All right. Be gracious and professional. The kids are going to be gracious and professional, and the judges need to be that way too. So as an ambassador for your careers, for your what you do in life, you need to make a good impression on these kids. They'll be doing their best to make a good impression on you, so just be reciprocal on that. And this is a question that's been kind of going around. Who's allowed in the judging room? approach we've taken for the LA-FLL region is that the judge advisor and the tournament director will decide who's allowed in the judging room. There's different opinions on should we allow no one, should we allow everyone, or something in between. Personally, myself, I like to allow a coach in to film the process if they like to. Beyond that, that's kind of how as far as I like to go. But once again, that's my own personal opinion. The judge, advisor, and the tournament director will set that policy for your tournament, and they'll let you know what it is. Okay. All right. So ranking teams. So I told you there's a couple different ways to do it. This is called the tick method of ranking teams. I've given you a link to the forum and the instructions, so you can kind of check it out on your own. But I've snipped a couple screenshots of some of the more important steps in the process, and I'll kind of describe it. But if you click on this link, like I said, I'll send out the PowerPoint to everybody after this call. But if you click on this link here, they'll give you a full set of instructions on how to do this, and also you can get a form to see how it's done. But basically what you do is you have a table with your teams listed, and as you interview each team, you use a tick mark here, like you see 1 tick mark, 2 tick mark, 3 tick marks, to rank the teams in order. And it doesn't matter what order you see them in. What you do is you'll add tick marks to kind of keep teams sorted. So the first team that you interview, let's say it's the Ultimate Potatoes. The Ultimate Potatoes are your first team you see, so obviously as soon as you get done interviewing them, they'll be your #1 ranked team because they're the only team that you've seen. So then the Robotic Flapjacks come in second, and you interview them. And in this case, since they're your second team, they could be either the #1 team or #2 team. But we're going to rank them at #2 because we thought the Ultimate Potatoes were better. So we would give them 2 tick marks. Okay, just ignore the fact that there's 3 right there. That's the next step. So then the Jaguar Robotics comes in, and you interview them, and you think, wow, they were great. They were better than the Robotic Flapjacks, but not quite as good as the Ultimate Potatoes. So you'd rank them as #2. And then you'd add 1 more tick mark here to the Robot Flapjack. So everybody that ranks below Jaguar Robotics would get an extra tick. And so that would take the Robotics Flapjacks to 3rd place, for example. So going along in the process, we've come along and we've interviewed a few more teams. By this point, you see that the Ultimate Flapjacks have gone down to #2 in the rank. The Tornado Terminators, they were just blew you away, so they're still #1. And you can see that we've added, I think there's 5 tick marks there for the Robotic Flapjacks. So they're kind of grayed out because we just think the top 4 teams are probably going to be in contention for an award. So, as my judging team, we've decided that, okay, so we're just going to kind of keep an eye on the top 4 teams. You may, once you start getting below rank 6 or so, 5 or 6, they're most likely not going to win an award. And sometimes at that point with the lower ranked teams, it's kind of hard to start telling them apart. There's just not enough to differentiate between them. So, so you'll see here that we have our top 4 ranked teams. So Tornado Terminators #1, that pushed Ultimate Potatoes down to #2. Firebots, they were our 3rd ranked team, and then Jaguar Robotics had gotten pushed down to 4th rank by that point. The Flaming Marshmallows, well, we were pretty sure that they were terrible. Maybe they didn't have a project presentation or something. Maybe this is project judging. So we just gave them an X because we knew they weren't going to be in the top ranked teams. Okay, so by the time you interviewed your 12th team down here, the Electric Pickles, you should see your #1, 2, 3, and 4 ranked teams. And then whenever you go into your deliberation with the judges, then you can use that ranking to let the judge advisor know where you thought these teams ranked. Okay. Another method, I call it the sorting method. And it's very similar to the tick method. The only difference is instead of having a form where you're making tick marks, you're stacking the rubrics as you interview the teams. So in this case, like in this example right here, the tornado terminators would be the top most rubric in your stack, and the flaming marshmallows would be somewhere down at the bottom of your stack. So you're kind of doing the same thing that you're doing with the tick marks. You're just doing it by stacking the rubrics in a particular order. So whatever method you feel most comfortable with, you're more than welcome to use. Talk with your judge advisor if you don't understand either one of these methods. The judge advisors will know how to walk you through either method. Okay. All right. Rubrics are kind of the machine that makes the judging process works. Every team gets evaluated based on the same rubric. Every team, and that's every team in FLL is going to be judged on this rubric. So it kind of keeps the standardization of the judging across the 29,000 teams that will be competing in FLL all around the world. Without this, the judging process would be the judging ranking would be kind of all over the place. But the rubric really kind of helps you know what you're looking for in the characteristics of the team that you're interviewing. Each type of judge, core values, project, robot design, they each have their own rubric. This just happens to be the core value rubric we're taking a look at here. But there are a lot of similarities between them. For example, each rubric is divided into 3 areas: inspiration, teamwork, gracious professionalism. The project rubric will have 3 areas, and the robot design will have 3 areas as well. Across the top, there's let's see. Across the top, there's 4 ranks that you can rank the team in. There's beginning, developing, accomplished, and exemplary. And then within each topic, there's further subdivision. So inspiration includes discovery, team spirit, integration, teamwork, effectiveness, efficiency, kids do the work. So they're each divided into 3, and I think maybe there's one that has 4 subdivisions within the area. There's actually there's 5 levels of achievement, not 4. The beginning, developing, accomplished, exemplary are the 4, and there's also this ND out here. ND stands for not demonstrated. And if a team doesn't demonstrate some particular aspect during the interview, you can circle the ND. It's not bad. It's just to let the team know that they didn't show anything in particular in that category during the interviewing process. It happens sometimes. So there's the not demonstrated there that you can just let them know that they need to work in that area. Now, if you take a look, let's just take inspiration and discovery here, for example. Actually, let's do this one. Let's do integration under inspiration. This is one of my favorite categories. It's the application of FLL values and skills outside FLL, ability to describe current and potential examples from daily life. Okay, so as a judge, take a look at this, and you'll notice that you're probably going to want to ask some questions like, so tell me about have you seen any instances outside your team where you've seen an FLL value demonstrated? Most often they'll pick the core value that says we have fun, and that will be they'll say, oh, we've seen kids outside our team having fun, something like that. Okay, so you've asked an open-ended question that's relevant to the rubric. Integration, application of FLL values and skills outside of FLL. The kids will tell you something about it. Maybe they'll have some examples. Maybe they won't be able to give you anything. Maybe they'll tell you a couple stories about, we were at a soccer practice and the other team, another team had a team member that got hurt, so we lent them one of our team members so we can complete the game. Okay, a great example of gracious professionalism. Now, if you look in here, under the 4 different levels, you'll see team does not apply FLL values and skills outside FLL. Right? Yeah, we don't really do anything outside of our team, so I don't really have anything to share with you. Boom, you've got a beginning team here because it does not apply to FLL values and skills outside FLL. Team's able to describe at least one example. Team is able to describe multiple examples. So it's a very clear and objective difference between developing and accomplished. It's either one example or multiple examples. And if they can tell you some stories about that, not just give an example, but actually tell you a story of where it actually has happened, then they rank as exemplary. So you'll see that in the exemplary categories and the beginning categories, there's some very explicit words in there that are used, such as always, never. In the developing and accomplished, you'll see things like sometimes and mostly, those kind of words. If you're going to rank a team exemplary, make sure that they truly do meet the description that's in this rubric. If it says, let's see, I want to find where it says always evident even in difficult situation, and team actively helps other teams. If you're going to rank a team as exemplary in cooperation, then they better have described a difficult situation where they've experienced cooperation and they have actively helped other teams. So they better be able to describe how they've actively helped other teams. Okay? So make sure that they truly are exemplary before you mark them at that role. A lot of times what I like to do whenever I'm working with another judge is we kind of start out here in the middle, and we can look one way or the other and say, did they have an emphasis on all 3 aspects, or did they only talk about 1 or 2 aspects of FLL? If they had all 3, was it a balance between all 3 aspects? If it's balanced between all 3 aspects, we'll mark them as exemplary. If it's not, we'll mark them as accomplished. Okay? The question was, somebody just asked a question, there seems to be quite a bit here. What if we don't make it all the way through? Actually, it's kind of funny. Core values, which this is, it looks like very kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Abstract. There's a lot of abstract kind of concepts in here. But you'll see whenever we talk about the core values judging that they'll do a core values activity, and you can work through a lot of these rubrics, and a lot of this rubric just by examining that core value activity. You need to do your best to try to hit as many of these areas as you can during your interview with them, with the team. The 10 minutes is not a lot of time, so the teams, the good teams, they practice their talking with judges, and they know how to get that information to you in 10 minutes, and they'll hit all these areas in the 10 minutes just by, if you just let them talk, they'll hit all these areas. You need to do, but like I said, you need to do your best to get through as many of these as you can, interviewing the kids, take notes, and during that 10 minutes that you have in between, those 10 minutes go very fast. I'll agree with you. You really need to kind of stay on your toes, work with the other judge to get notes written down. Maybe one person is writing comments while the other person is trying to figure out exactly where they ranked on the rubric. Okay, and that's also why we try to pair up an experienced judge with rookie judges as well, because they kind of have the feeling for the flow and the pace of the judging process. One thing I would emphatically express to you is don't try to save all your rubrics to the end to write notes. Use those 10 minutes in between teams to write your notes on the rubrics. Now, you won't be handing your rubrics back to the teams until after the competition's over. Okay, so you'll have your rubrics the whole time you're judging. But it's really hard to write comments for a team that you saw at 9 o'clock after you've seen 12 teams at noon. And there's going to be other things that you're going to be doing at noon, such as deliberating with the other judges. So just stay on top of things. You have to write fast. Use keywords in your comments. Don't be overly verbose in your comments. Just make sure that you get the point across effectively to the teams, just like they've been practicing to get their points across effectively to the judges. Okay. Try to keep the feedback positive and constructive. Like I said earlier, you can let a team know if they're need some extra work in a particular area, but you can do that in a positive and constructive way. Maybe consider more emphasis on core values the next. Maybe consider more emphasis on core values, right? Because they only had emphasis on two. They focused on robot and project. Would love to see you use sensors on your robot next time. Think of ways that you can use a sensor on your robot. You'll see in robot design that part of that is did you make use of sensors? Okay. So, all right, core values. Let's talk about core values really quick. These are the 8 core values that the teams will know. I'm not going to read them all to you here, but FLL kind of centers around these core values. It's what differentiates us from other robotics competitions where it's just all about the robot. For FLL, it's really all about the core values, and the robot is just it's a tool that we use with the kids to keep them interested and excited in STEM. But the core values are kind of key to what differentiates an FLL team from any other robotics team. And these kids, after 8 weeks working together as a team, you'll see them living these FLL core values. So take a look at them, make sure that you know what they are, especially core value judges, because you'll probably be asking teams if they know what the core values are. There'll be a core value activity. It's usually 3 or 4 minutes at the beginning of the judging session. What's cool about this is it's kind of an abstract activity. It's an activity that's used for the judges to look at the teams and see how they work together as a team, see how effective they are at communication amongst themselves, see how they manage their time. It's a really interesting way to watch the teams in action and see a lot of their core values shine or not. There are no right or wrong answers during the core value activity. You're asking the kids to do something, they do it, and you evaluate them during the process of doing it. You try to keep the guidance to them at a minimum. You can tell them what they're expected to do, and then you kind of let them go and see where they go with it. And you'll be looking at these: teamwork, respect, inclusion, efficiency, effectiveness can all be just observed during this activity. If you go back here to the core value, these are the kind of things that you're looking for on the rubric. The judge advisor will let you know what the core values activity is at the beginning of the day. I usually ask the teams to keep it secret. Don't let the other teams know. A lot of times I'll say, okay, we have a secret project for you today. Please don't share this with the other teams. Here's a box of Legos. Please build your favorite core value. You have 3 minutes, go. And then let them just go at it. It's actually a lot of fun. I like the core values activities. Some sample questions. For example, like kids do the work. How would your team handle a meeting if your head coach was not able to make it? Are they so dependent on the head coach that they would just not be able to do anything, or can they adapt and kind of work on their own even though the head coach is not there to guide them? Integration. Do you have any examples of core values you'd like to share? Nice open-ended question. Right out of the rubric, share stories, share examples of core values, and see if they have stories or if they just have examples. Johnny wants to do the cloud mission. The rest of the team wants to do the search engine instead. How do you handle this? Go back and look at the core values rubric. Let's see. Problem solving and decision making process help team achieve their goals. So there's a kind of an open-ended question that's like directly relevant to a particular point on the rubric. So those are the kind of questions that you're going to want to ask the team during your interviewing process. Question is who comes up with the core value activity? The tournament director is responsible for having a core value activity. They can work with a judge advisor to figure out what that activity is, but it's usually got to be developed and ready to go the day of the tournament. So ultimately, the tournament director is responsible for core values activity. The judge advisor will relate to the judges what that core value activity is. It'll be the same for all the teams at the tournament. It doesn't have to be the same across all tournaments. It just has to be the same for every team at the tournament. So all 12, 24, however many teams they'll do, will all do that same activity. All right, again, we're back to the rubric for core values. Inspiration, you're looking for how balanced they are between all three aspects of FLL. Remember, core values, project, robot, are they all addressed in a balanced manner? Team spirit, do they all have matching shirts? You know, kind of hard to have team spirit if you don't have a similar look and feel to yourself. You know, are they having fun? Do they have a team cheer? Those are all examples of team experiences, team spirit. Examples and stories of core values experience, especially outside the team. So look for those stories. You know, see if the kids will tell you stories about their core values experiences. Kids do the work, coaches guide. Another interesting one with the kids do the work. It's like, you know, we know that the coaches shouldn't build the robot, and we know that kids can't build a robot completely on their own without some guidance from the coach. Somewhere in between there is the right level of kids doing the work. Has that team found that right level, and are they able to express it to you? How's the team organized? How do they run their meetings? You know, do they do just work on the robot? Does everybody kind of come together and work on the robot? Do they set goals for each meeting? You know, ask them how do they run their meetings? You know, I'm sure a lot of you have meetings at work. You know, maybe you guys use agile processes or something like that, where you set SMART goals at the beginning of the day or the beginning of the week that you're going to try to accomplish during that week. See if those kids are using some of those same techniques. You know, the coaches should be kind of guiding the kids to run effective team meetings. You know, 8 weeks is a short time to put together a project and build a robot. You know, do these kids do that effectively? The gracious professionalism category. Excuse me, just a minute. Okay, the gracious professionalism category. You know, is everybody included on the team? You know, does one kid get does the young girl that's shy kind of get shoved to the side while the 14-year-old boys, you know, put all the robot together? You know, look for that. There should be balanced inclusion on the team. You know, everybody should be involved. Do they respect each other, or you know, do they shout over top of each other? Do they encourage each other and say, yeah, that's a great idea. You know, let's see if we can implement it. So that's kind of encouragement within a team. Do they encourage other teams? Do they hold seminars with other teams to teach them how to program? Do they share their ideas with other teams? Ask them these kind of questions. Okay. All right. On to project. So core values, we saw there's some sort of activity at the beginning, 3-4 minute activity. Then you do the remaining time is question and answer with the teams. In project, it's structured a little bit different. They get 5 minutes to present to you. Then you get 5 minutes to do Q&A with them. That 5-minute presentation by the team, it starts whenever the team arrives for judging. So use your judgment exactly when that starts. Does it start the minute they walk through the doors? The minute they all kind of like get inside? You know, but their 5 minute starts, and if they have any setup time for their presentation, that is part of their 5 minutes that they're given. So if they have to get a computer booted up or whatever, that's all part of their 5 minutes. Teams know this. Teams should be prepared to start their presentation as soon as they walk through that door. So, you know, use your judgment. That's why we have human beings in the judging room. It's not all done by computer. but um, you just got to remember that setup time is part of their 5 minutes. Look for creativity in their presentation and the relevance to the project. Teams will like to do skits. They'll like to sing songs to you. They'll may have a PowerPoint presentation. Some teams are incredibly creative, and you'll be laughing and along with them. Other teams just do a simple presentation to get their point across very effectively. So, but creativity is part of the evaluation. After that, you get 5 minutes Q&A. Look for things like references for the research. Can they tell you how they found out this information? Is the project innovative and new, or is it improving on an existing solution? Especially look to see if the teams shared with others. A lot of teams will say, yeah, we did a presentation to our school. That's great, but we did a presentation to a group of educators that directly benefited from our project, our new way of teaching in the classroom. That's the kind of sharing that you're looking for, that they're sharing with others that can actually benefit from their project. The project this year, the theme is FLL World Class. It's about improving the education process, and their questions should be relevant to that theme. Here's the project rubric. Again, you can see that it's divided into 3 areas: presentation, innovation, solution, research. Same 5 levels, but different questions within here. So they have a clear definition of the problem being studied, for example. They use imagination to use and develop and deliver their presentation. So under research, look that the question is well defined and concise. If it's too broad or too narrow, you'll need to let the teams know in your comments. We want to improve education for kids in 3rd grade. Okay, that question's way too broad, and you'd have to mark them appropriately for it. Do they have multiple sources of information? Can't do all your research on Google, on the internet. No matter how many websites that you Google and read, Googling sites is one source of information. Other sources of information, kids may get old school on you and actually go to a library and read a book. Don't count on it, but it could happen. They may look at magazines. They may talk to professionals. These are all different sources of information. Make sure that they document those sources of information and let you know what they are. Ask them if they have a bibliography for their research. Do they take a look at costs? How much is the potential saving? What are the key metrics do they look at for their project? Maybe they came up with a great idea. Maybe it's not cost effective. Did they discover that by looking at the cost? And did they research and see if a solution already exists? It's not a problem if a solution already exists. Maybe they're improving on that solution. They have an innovative way to improve on an existing solution. That's okay. But if they come to you with a project that already exists, let's use videos in the classroom to make things more interesting. Okay, we already do that, and that would not be improving on a current solution. Under innovation, make sure that the solution is clear and concise. So up here we have a clear and concise question. Make sure that the solution is also clear and concise, that they've done a good job of describing that solution and how it will benefit the community. Again, is it a novel solution, or does it improve on existing solutions? Did the team share with others, especially outside the immediate team's community? So what I mean by that, sharing within the school is great. Going to an educators conference where there's other educators, or going to their school district and talking to the administrators there, that's all a great way of sharing outside their team's immediate community. And were they creative, and was it relevant to the project? So If they show you a project that talks about natural disasters, well, they're a year behind the time because that was last year's project. It really needs to be about improving education. Robot design. This is a third category judging. Something new this year that hasn't been done was not done last year for the LA region is that there will be a practice table available in the judging room. Last year, the robot design judges had to go out to the competition area and watch their first practice match. Now you'll have a practice table in the judging room. You can ask, and it'll have a field setup kit, and you can ask the teams to demonstrate the robot on that table in the room. Take a look at the construction of the robot. You're looking for robustness. It shouldn't fall apart as they try to pick it up. It should stay together. If they're using manipulators, they should be easy to swap out so they don't waste a lot of time on the field switching between manipulators. Did they document their design process? Ask them for that documentation that they can show you. They don't have to leave it with you, but they can at least show it to you. Ask them also for a printout of the code that they use to run the robot. Take a look on there for comments and use of my blocks. Also, were sensors used for a specific intent? So sometimes you'll have sensors there just so that the kids can say, hey, yes, I have a sensor, and they meet a checkbox on that rubric. Make sure that that sensor is actually used for something in the robot. Make sure that they're using it in a mission somehow. For example, if they use a light sensor to detect a line, do they actually run a mission that needs to have a line detected? Or is that light sensor there just to meet a criteria on the rubric? All right, under robot design, you'll see that the categories are mechanical design, how efficient, how durable, and is it acting appropriately? Does it go fast when it needs to, go slow when it needs to? Programming, you're looking for comments in the code, modular code. That's where we're talking about the my blocks. Does the coding look appropriate? And hopefully the judges in the robot design area are able to at least look at code and kind of understand what it's doing. The two judges that are in the room, one of you two should be able to do it. If not, the kids should be able to describe it to you. If they show you the code, ask them to tell you to describe it to you if you're not sure what you're looking at. And here's where we talk about, did they use sensors for feedback? So, was that sensor, did they have a touch sensor to tell them whenever they got to the search engine mission? Did they use a sensor to, know whenever they're pushing the search engine bar? Also, ask them about their design process. Did they do game analysis to figure out which missions that they want to run? How do they determine which missions? Do they look for grouping of missions so that missions that are close to home are grouped together so you can do a lot of them in a short period of time? Do they group missions by the type of manipulator that they use? How did they determine which missions they're going to do? Did they vote? Did the team take votes? Did they do a weighted objects table? Was there some logic behind that design process that they followed? Great if they have documentation that shows how that was done. Also great if they can tell you how it was done. Doesn't have, it'd be nice to be documented, but if they can at least describe it to you, thumbs up on that as well. Okay, and again, make sure that you follow what's in this exemplary category. Sound construction, no repairs. If they demonstrate the robot to you and a piece falls off while they're trying to demonstrate it, ask them how it worked on the field. Did they have to repair anything? Innovation down here. This is a really tough to get an exemplary in innovation. Did they have an original feature that adds significant value? That's a pretty high bar to meet right there. So, make sure that you fully understand these different categories and levels on your rubrics. I'm trying to rush along because we're a little bit over time, but that's okay. We'll get it done here. During the deliberation process, the judge advisor is going to be in that room. The judge advisor's responsibility is to make the judging process and the deliberation flow properly. They're there to help guide you guys through that deliberation process. follow the directions of the Judge Advisor. They've done this before. They know how to get you through this process. And also remember that there's no wrong conclusions. Everybody's going to come to an agreement. Some not, there'll be some conclusion that we'll come to. You may not agree 100% with where you guys arrived at, but work together as professionals and adults to get to conclusions that we know. We make sure that the teams get the awards that they should. Within your judging area, you're going to be sorting the teams from lowest to highest. That's all about that tick mark or the ranking process that we talked about earlier. You're going to debate among your fellow judges. So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go through the interviews. You're going to rank your teams. The two sets of core value judges are going to come back and between their 24 teams, each group's going to have seen 12 of them. You've got to rank those in a sorted order as well now, so you know who your number one team is. You're both going to come out of your interview process with the number one team. One of those two is going to be higher ranked than the other. So you just kind of go through, okay, this is my number one team. The other guys go, this is my number one team. Which one do we think are better? And say why you think they're better. And out of those two, you'll see one ranks better or than the other. Okay. You might get ties, but who knows? You can work those out between the judges. Use your notes. You took great notes. You wrote down the team. You wrote team name and team number, so you know exactly who it applies to. Use those notes whenever you guys are trying to sort your and rank your rubrics and your teams. And advocate for your teams and please stick to the facts. Everybody has a team that said think that this team just has to win an award. Well, if they have to win an award, then you should have good notes and facts to back that up. If they're a project team, you should be able to describe why they're so creative and how their project is going to save millions of dollars, and they've broadcasted around the world on NBC Nightly News, and there should be a reason why that team is number one, and you should be able to back it up with facts from your notes. Then the judging area comes together and they list the top 6 or 8 teams in their area. Let's see. Let me show you something really quick. The Judge Advisor will probably be using a tool, a deliberation tool, and this kind of helps you go through the deliberation process and rank your teams. So as you can see here, you can see we have the 24 teams listed, and we've ranked them from 1 to that's 7. So a lot of these teams were kind of like ranked down pretty low, but we got we've got a number 1 team here. We think that this team's number 2. This is the ranking that has occurred after the 2 sets of robot design judges have come together and ranked their teams. We do the same for project. We do the same for core values. And we also enter their robot performance scores in the spreadsheet as well. Now the nice thing about that is go over here to the deliberations tab, press a button, and it goes through the process of helping you rank the teams in the various areas. Okay, so it does a lot of the tedious work for you. It shows you who the top 2 are in each group, and this is a recommended award team. This is recommended the teams that should get an award. Now this is all programs. It's all it's all computer doing it, and that's okay because there is a lot of algorithm and process that the judge advisor would apply to come to this exact same conclusion if we were doing this all on the board. Okay, so this is just kind of a tool that helps the judge advisor rank the teams. And as judges, you can also come and deliberate whether you think BattleBots really should be number 1 over here. Maybe for whatever reason you thought Robot Chicken should be number 1. You can override what's here, but 99% of the time this is where you would arrive if you did the whole debate using chalkboard and markers. All right, let's see. Let me go back to the presentation. Champion teams must be in the top 40% performance score, must rank high in all categories, will most likely advance the championship. Spread the wealth, we already talked about that. We're going to identify, depending on the number of teams that are in a tournament, most tournaments are 24-team tournaments, which means that there'll be 2 champions, 2 robot design, 2 core values, 2 project and judges award winners. Your judge advisor will tell you exactly what awards are going to be given out for that competition. Okay, and finally, selecting the advancing teams. Again, work with the judge advisor on this one. It's usually the competition winners and champions advance. There may be extreme extenuating circumstances where this is not the case, but most likely those will be advancing teams. Note that advancing teams do not have to be award winners. So you could have a team that's ranked far enough down in robot design that didn't get an award, but you think that they should advance for some particular reason, and that's okay. But so it is possible, but it's not likely that's going to happen. Usually the people that are selected for the awards are your top teams, and those are usually the ones that you want to pick to advance. I'm just letting you know that it is possible that there is no requirement that an advancing team is an award winner. You're looking for strong, well-balanced teams to advance on the championship. That championship competition, we want the best teams in LA to be represented at that competition. So these are the kind of teams that you want to advance from your qualifying tournaments. Okay, and it's somewhere in 20 to 25% of the teams advance. The judge advisors will know exactly how many teams are advancing from your tournament, and you can help them. You can help the judge advisor pick those teams. All right, I'm going to unmute and and see if there's any questions. We're going to have to go kind of quick. Like I said, I am going a little bit over time. So you guys are unmuted. Please go ahead and ask a question if you have one. Okay.
Hey Rick, this is Ty.
Yeah, Ty.
Just kind of curious. Do we? Hold on. I'm getting feedback.
If you want to type it, Ty, I can reread it myself.
Hey, I was just kind of curious. Do we have to have the robot design judges outside of the gym? We were going to put 3 tables in the competition area and just continue to do it like the year before.
No,
can we do that?
I would prefer that the tables are in the judging room. Every team should have the same experience regardless of which qualifying tournament they're at for the judging process. And this year we've decided that the tables would be in the judging room. For one, it's a private interview with the teams, and not out in the public where everybody can see it. Sometimes it's easier to ask questions that way. It's easier for teams to open up, but I prefer them to be in the judging room. If it's a space problem, I've done judging sessions in the past where we've shared a table, but that table is not out in the competition area. It's still somewhere in the judging area where the teams are being judged, not in front of the public, but kind of in private.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, no problem. All right. Let's see. I think you've probably all have received an email from me, so you have my email address, and I will be sending out this presentation to everybody, so you will have my email address at least once you get that once you get the presentation. Feel free to ask me questions. I'm available 24/7 until we get through championship, and we'll answer your questions or help you through any kind of processes or problems that you might be having. Okay. All right. So that's it for today, and it definitely will be a blast judging. You guys are in for an experience that you've never had before. It's a lot of fun. That's why I love judging at all levels: FRC, FTC, FLL. It's a blast. And you're going to see some incredibly smart kids, and at the end of it, you'll walk away feeling good about the world, and there's hope for us in future generations with these kids that are coming through this robotics competitions. All right, next up is going to be a Judge Advisor training. If you're a Judge Advisor, a Tournament Director, you're welcome to stay on the line. If you're a judge, you're welcome to stay on the line as well. There's nothing, I'm not going to show any kind of secrets because there are no secrets. It's just a little bit more in-depth of stuff that goes on behind the scenes while the judges are in their deliberation rooms and working with the teams. So feel free to stick around, and we'll do. Hopefully, it won't be an hour long, but we'll do what it takes. That's okay. All right, thank you very much. And I'm just going to go right into the Judge Advisors because we're already a little bit over schedule. So,
thank you, Rick.
You bet. All right. Okay.
Rick, I just wanted to bring up something that is from FIRST. Mm-hmm. And that is the advancement criteria are the same ones used for the Champions Award. So if you look at the Excel in the deliberation worksheet, so if you look at the rightmost column under advancing team, that's the order in which that should be used to advance teams.
Okay, so they have to be
that's based on overall ranking.
Okay, so they have to be in the top 40% of performance scores as well.
They wouldn't show up in here unless they were. So when this is designed, it's designed so that these are the teams that can advance, and that's the order in which you should be picking the teams to advance.
Okay, so that would.
And I created. Yeah.
That would explain why a team that didn't get an award might advance, because you could have an award-winning team that's not in the top 40% of performance.
Exactly. I played with the number to actually demonstrate that this is possible.
Yeah, we see some over here. Non-award winners.
Right.
Okay, excellent. Thanks for that.
Sure.
Okay, so on the call is just Tony and Ty and his 5,000 students there. So let's jump into Judge Advisors, and I'm going to leave the everybody unmuted since it's just you guys now, and I'm sure it'll be a little bit quieter. All right. So some of the things are the same. We talked about with the judges, but I also said the Judge Advisors are facilitators, organizers, and leaders. So as a Judge Advisor, you get the honor of working with 6, 12, 18, 24 sets of judges, and making sure that they stay happy and give you good outcome. And the only way that that's done is by giving them the information and the tools that they need to do their jobs, and kind of clearing a path for them and make sure that they're able to do the jobs that they need to do. So in that sense, that you're facilitating their work, you're organizing their work, and you're leading the way to show them the work that they need to get done. That's the job of a Judge Advisor. Also, you get to practice your ninja deliberation skills to help the teams come to help the judges come to a conclusion where everybody's happy with the results of the judging process. The deliberation software that we took a look at really helps facilitate, makes that job a little bit easier, because the algorithms that we've all practiced as Judge Advisors are built into the macros on that Excel sheet. And after having judged after having acted as Judge Advisor for several years with FLL, it's the same process over and over again to lead them to the proper conclusion of which team should get the awards and which team should advance. So I feel totally comfortable having a spreadsheet and macros get you to at least the first cut of the award winners. We've already gone over the awards, but let me do that again just for the purpose of the recording. Robot performance is how the robots perform on the field. It's determined by their play on the field and their highest score that they earn during the day. The teams will be ranked by that highest score. Out of the teams that are at the competition, there are going to be teams that are strong in all categories. They're robot design, project, core values, and they're also ranked top in the performance awards. They're in the top 40%. these are your champion teams. These are the teams that are just strong FLL teams that they're all across the board. These are your champions. We'll also have awards given in core values, project, and robot design. And this comes from the work that the judges have done in the interview room. They'll be identifying the top 1 or 2 teams in each one of those areas. Finally, there's a judges award. This is kind of an open-ended award that is given to a team that hasn't gotten an award already, but they ranked high in multiple categories, but just not high enough to get an award. Or maybe they've gone out of their way to help other teams during the competition. They've done a tremendous amount of gracious professionalism at the competition, something like that. What you do want to avoid is awarding hardship stories. Although there's nothing that says that you can't award a hardship story, you just want to be careful that you're not awarding teams just because they've encountered some particular hardship. All right, we're really looking for the teams that do well in the performance of their robot or a particular project. Maybe their project has some particular social value that you wanted to recognize with an award. Make sure that look for the positive things that you can award. The volunteer award, the judges have nothing to do with the volunteer award. This is completely determined by the tournament director. They'll usually give it to an adult or a coach from a team that has helped out their area tremendously, so they want to recognize that person as a great volunteer. And then finally, these are not technically awards, but the judges and the Judge Advisor get to determine which teams will be advancing to the championship. The number of teams that advance are determined by the partner, and it's usually based on the available championship capacity. So we take the number of teams that we can have a championship, look at how many teams we get competing, and how many teams are at each competition, and come up with a number that says, out of your 12 teams, 4 teams can advance, or out of your 24 teams, 6 teams can advance, whatever that number is. And we'll see I got the numbers in this presentation a little bit later. We definitely want to share the wealth, so we'd like to try to give only 1 award per team. So I'm not going to award a team number 1 place core values and a number 2 place in project design, for example, or project, for example. We really want to have as many teams as possible walk away with some sort of recognition and award. There are some that this doesn't apply to. For example, robot performance. It's very likely that the number 1 robot performing team will probably get a robot design award or a champion award. In that case, the robot performance award does not count towards spreading the wealth. And the volunteer award, which really has nothing to do with the teams, also does not count in that sharing the wealth concept. Teams or coaches that demonstrate an egregious disregard for core values will be disqualified from winning any awards, and that includes robot performance award, champion award, judges award. Any award that's given out at the competition based on judging they would be disqualified from winning that award if there isn't an egregious, and I emphasize the word egregious, disregard for core values. One team gets in a fight with another team, and they start throwing fists. That's probably an egregious disregard for core values, and I would probably disqualify that team from winning an award. A little pushing or shoving in line, that's not an egregious disregard for core values. That's just kids being kids around each other, and that's going to happen. What I'd really like to take place here is, if there is an egregious disregard for core values observed by somebody out on the field, by a referee, by another coach, by the tournament director, please make sure that that information goes to the Judge Advisor and not directly to the judges. I've had a case in the past where somebody saw a coach helping out their team too much. They helped the team do some work on the robot. They came and talked to some of my judges, and those judges decided to drop that team from winning any awards. Whenever I found out about it, I did not think that was an egregious disregard for core values, and I would not bring that up in the deliberation process unless I had some sort of case where I had 2 teams going for the number 1 spot on robot design, for example. Then I may bring that up at that point to say, well, okay, here's something that might be a tiebreaker for you guys. Take this into consideration. Okay, so it's really important that that kind of information filters through the judge advisor and not go directly to the judges, so that the judge advisor can make the determination of how to use that information.
Rick, this is fantastic clarification.
Oh.
So we kind of need to push it around.
Okay.
Because I just received an email from practice tournament director about that last night, and then I received another email from a coach that complained about disqualifying teams. I'll forward that email to you.
Okay.
About disqualifying teams because they saw the coach helping the kids with the robot.
Okay. Yeah. That to me that's
so
not.
This is a very good point. I appreciate that.
To me that's not egregious. You know.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Yeah.
It's the way I like to describe the kids do the work is you know when there's too much and you know when there's too little. It's that big gray area in between where it's really hard to make the call, you know, and you really have to kind of err on the side of favoring the teams in that gray area.
Particularly if they can explain to you what's going on. Maybe somebody helped them. We all learn that way.
Yep.
If somebody helped them learn something that is a little bit beyond their age, but they're able to explain it to you, that is not interference from the coach.
Yep, I agree. Okay.
Okay.
So, what should I bring? Well, judge advisors should bring the same thing that the judges bring. So, wear business casual clothes. You obviously want to look professional. You're going to be taking notes, so you want some note paper and a pen. And more than likely, you'll have to keep time at some point. But you know, the timekeeping device is really for the judges. Now, this one's kind of important. If you can bring a backup core value activity, the tournament directors should have one ready for you. But if for some reason they don't, you're going to have to be able to come up with one on the spot. So what I tend to do is I tend to bring the bucket of Legos in my car, and worst case I can bring out, you know, put a bucket of Legos in the core values room and tell the kids to make their favorite core values, make something that represents their favorite core value, because to me that's the kind of activity that really makes the team work and discuss and use time efficiently and all those kind of things that you're trying to evaluate them for. You know, so that's your ace in the hole if the tournament director doesn't have what you need for the core values activity. Talk with your tournament director ahead of time. You know, not only do you want to make sure that they have a core values activity, you also want to make sure that they have enough judges for you. You also want to make sure that, you know, you have a schedule, things like that. So judge advisors, I really encourage you to talk with your tournament director before the day of the tournament and make sure everything's lined up. Because remember, you're a facilitator, you're an organizer, you're a leader. You need to be prepared as a leader. Judge setup. Each judging team has 2 judges. Make sure that one of those judges in that judging room has to be an adult. First is really big on youth protection program this year, and if you've been involved with Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts, you know the rule that no adult should be alone by themselves with kids. Okay, so if you have 2 people in the judging room, 2 judges in the judging room, both of them are over 18, then you're covered. I've had some questions asked to me about the adults in the judging room, and the policy has been that we were asking judges to be over 18 and that there be at least 1 adult in the judging room. And then of course somebody asked me, well, if they're over 18, isn't both judges already adults? And well, yeah, technically yes. I'm thinking more of an adult as somebody over 21, somebody that's a little bit older. We try to get judges that are professionals in the field, engineers, teachers, scientists, you know, project managers, whatever. And just by definition, you're going to have the adults in those kind of positions if you get those kind of judges. Some tournaments have trouble getting enough judges, and they rely on FRC team members to be judges. Now we're getting to that gray area where maybe they're 18 years old, maybe they're 17, maybe they're 16. That's once again, that's kind of a gray area. If I'm not going to stop a tournament from running because they have 23 adults and one 17-year-old. That's going to be in the judging room. If that judge starts getting down to the age of the FLL team members, then I start having a problem with it, because now that team is being judged by their peers rather than being judged by professionals, and that's kind of where we draw the line. So judge advisors try to make sure your tournament directors are getting the caliber of judges that you want in your judging rooms. We want professionals, we want engineers, we want people that are in STEM, we want people that are inspiration to the students that they're judging. Okay, so our policy is 18 or older to be in the judging room, and I'll kind of look to the side if you have to stick a 17-year-old in there to make sure the tournament runs. I'd rather have a second judge at 17-year-old than just a single judge by themselves. For every 12 teams, you have a team of judges. So for 24 teams, you need 12 judges, 4 core values, 4 project, 4 robot design, and that would make 2 sets of 2 for the core values, 2 sets of 2 for project, 2 sets of 2 for robot design. The more judging teams you have, the quicker the interviews are completed. So if you're getting up around 32 teams, you don't have quite enough to reach the level of 3 sets of judges. But if you do have 3 sets of judges for 32 teams, your judging process will go a little bit quicker. So it helps with the scheduling. The drawback is as you add more teams of judges, they see a smaller percentage of the teams. So for example, whenever you have a 12-team tournament, the core values judges see all 12 teams, and the project sees all 12, robot design sees all 12. And so it makes it a lot easier for them to deliberate and come to the conclusion of what are the top-ranked teams. When you have 2 teams, you can kind of put them together and say, okay, you 2 teams go over there and rank your 24 teams top to bottom, figuring out between your 2. That's pretty easy. Once you get to the point where you have 3 judging teams, now you've only seen a third of the team. Now it becomes a little bit more difficult to rank those teams. At that point, you'll see a little bit later on we talk about callbacks. At that point, you really need to start implementing callbacks and stuff like that. It really complicates the process. All right. Some regional specific rules that we've got this year. Like I said, this is specific to our LA FLL region. It's come on through discussions with Tony and myself and the other leaders on the planning committee. The core values poster is going to be optional. In the past, that's been required. That's where the teams make a poster that represents 4 areas of core values, and they come in and they were given 2 minutes to talk about it. So that's optional. Core values activity is going to be required at every tournament. The robot design executive summary, that's something that teams at one point were required to bring in, I think. It gives them a way of documenting their design process. That still is discussed in I think the coach's handbook, and it's okay if they want to bring that in, but it's not required. If the team gives you a robot design executive summary, then that's perfectly okay. And we're strongly encouraging teams to bring a printout of the code. There's some areas in robot design, particularly around the programming, that is really hard to judge if you don't have a printout of the code or can see it somehow. Alternatives to the teams having a printout, the robot design judges can have the team show it to them on a computer, so the team can bring up their computer and show them the code, or at last resort, the team can describe the programming to them. But that really takes away from the effectiveness of judging in the programming area of robot design if you don't have a printout that you can refer back to. All right. Need to talk a little bit about conflict of interest. You really want to make sure that we have the appearance of integrity in our judging process, and that means that we identify conflicts of interest and determine how to handle that. So a conflict of interest is if I have a coach from a team that's competing at that competition, that's obviously a conflict of interest. I would prefer not to have that coach as a judge. Ask him to be perform some other function at the tournament and bring somebody else in as a judge. That just eliminates that as a problem. But that's clearly a conflict of interest. Where you start getting into gray areas is I might have a teacher at the school of a team that's competing as a judge. Okay, you really want to identify that teacher, or you really want to know about that in advance. But most likely, that teacher is going to be able to keep any kind of bias about the team out of the discussion, because they're far enough removed from the team where they're not involved in the daily activity of the team, that it will probably be okay. Another example is I might have the parent of a team member as a judge. Again, we're somewhere in between that teacher and the coach. They're not quite as removed as the teacher is, and they're not quite as involved as the coach is. But again, now the parent of a student on that team, you want to identify that and make sure to note that as a conflict of interest. And you're probably going to want to ask them not to be involved in deliberations that includes that team. So if you have two sets of judges, you'd want to make sure that that team is not assigned to that set of judges that has that parent. And this is where it really hurts. In the deliberation room, if that team is brought up during deliberation, that parent has to remain silent and cannot influence that conversation. Okay, because they're getting into that side of the spectrum where they have a conflict of interest. They know things about the team that did not come from that judging interview process, and that has to stay out of the deliberation. That has to stay out of the deliberation room. Otherwise, it kind of pollutes the discussion that takes place. So you have to ask that judge not to participate during that discussion. And it's really unfair to the team at that point if one of the judges is asked to not take part in the deliberations. So we really want to set up a group of judges that have no conflict of interest. That's the best situation. That doesn't always happen. So we want to identify where there's a possibility of a conflict of interest, and we want to manage that conflict as best we can. You identify where they're at on that spectrum of the conflict of interest, and you handle it appropriately, whether it's allowing them to be part of the judging process, asking them to not take part of the deliberation, or the other extreme where you're going to have to ask them to take some other role at the tournament and you're going to have to find a replacement. Okay. We really want to avoid the appearance of impropriety in the judging room. It's already secret. It's a secret enough process as it is. Because remember, we ask that what happens in the judging room stays in the judging room. So it's kind of this, mysterious process that takes place. So we throw these adults in, they throw the teams in, they talk, and magically awards come out the other end, and that whole kind of process in between there is out of view. So we have to make sure that we maintain that integrity as judges and judge advisors. Okay. So what happens on the tournament day? You've got the same schedules as the judges do that we talked about earlier, but you have some different responsibilities. So at 7 a.m., volunteer check-in, find the tournament director, introduce yourself. A couple slides. I got some things to check in the morning, things to ask the tournament director, so we'll go over that in detail. Ask judges and assistants to meet in the deliberation room at 7:30 a.m. for instructions. What you're going to want to do during this instruction period, this can be while they're eating breakfast, so tell them to grab some breakfast, get over to the judges room, and you're going to meet them all over there to give them a pep talk. At 7:30, go over to your judging room with your judges and judge assistants and review the day, describe the schedule and the process. So you may have judges that didn't come to our judge training these last 2 days, or today and Monday. So you might have to go back over briefly go over what a rubric is, how they're supposed to put comments, constructive comments on there. They need to take notes. They're going to come back into deliberation. Just kind of walk through the mini version of the judge training I gave earlier. Tell them the process and the schedule. and then make sure that they're all out to the opening ceremonies at 8:30 a.m. So as a leader and organizer, you're going to kind of like be telling them what the flow of the day is, and then make sure that they kind of keep up with that schedule. Your tournament director should have a printout of the schedule and the teams that the judges will be interviewing, and you should get that to the judges at this point, so they know what they're going to be doing during the day. 8:30 a.m. opening ceremonies. All the judge advisors should be out there for opening ceremonies. Everybody gets they do an opening speaker. Everybody cheers, and the tournament director will probably introduce you and your judges, or the tournament director may ask you to introduce your judges. Whatever the case, one of the things that you should be checking with your tournament director is, does somebody have a list of all the judges, their names, and maybe where they work, so that they can be introduced. By 9 a.m. the judging starts. You got to make sure that your judges are in the room. Teams will be waiting. You got to make sure that you emphasize to your judges that they need to stay on time. It's critical that they stay on time, because if they start to fall behind, that makeup time comes out of their note-taking time and their rubric commenting time. It does not come out of the team's time. The team deserves 10 minutes with the judges in the judging room. So keep that in mind. Also, you need to be aware if the tournament schedule starts to slip, and keep your judges informed. If the robot rounds are running behind, that means that their judging schedules are going to run behind, because they're all kind of tied together. So just make sure that the judges are keep informed. Keep your judges hydrated as well. Make sure your judging assistants get water to the judges in the judging room. Nothing worse than spending 10 minutes interviewing a team and having a coughing fit because your mouth is dry. At 12 o'clock, the interview process should be done. We'd like to have a working lunch, because we're on a pretty tight schedule. During that lunch, you should work with the judging team so that they can rank their combined rubrics into highest to lowest order. At 1 o'clock, you want to begin the deliberation process, and we'll go into some detail about that deliberation process. It could be manual, it could be automated using software. If it's automated using software, it goes pretty quick. If it's manual on a whiteboard, it's going to take a little bit longer. So you've got 2 hours between 1 and 3 p.m. to work on that deliberation. If you were using the software, you probably won't take that full 2 hours, but if you're doing it by hand, it could take the 2 hours. And you may have the sorting and ranking of all the teams by the combined judging groups. That could spill over from lunch into that 1 o'clock time period. Just be sure that you are done with deliberations by the time that the competition's rounds finish. That's a key milestone on your day, because things start to happen pretty quick after that, and you've got to get through the process of identifying the champions and filtering up all the, as you identify champions, it's going to open up holes in your various judging categories. So like maybe number 1 in robot design becomes a champion, so you got to kind of move everything up, so your number 2 robot design becomes your number 1 robot design. You got to pick a new number 2 robot design. The software does that for you, so that's your big time saver with the software. If you're doing it manually on the board, it's a little bit of erasing and rewriting of lists and deliberating with judges. So key milestone: make sure that your deliberations are complete before the competition rounds finish. And by deliberations, that means that you've identified your top 4 or 5 teams in robot design, project, and core value, because you cannot identify champions until the competition rounds are completed. All right, so once they're complete, you can choose your champions, and you can select your award winners. In a minute, we'll see how many awards you're giving out per tournament. It's basically going to be first and second place for champions, each judging category, and judges awards. Make sure all your judges get out to the award ceremonies so that they can high-five teams. This is also another area that you're going to have to work with the judges. You'll have a lot of judges say, you know, I have to leave at 3 o'clock. You know, can I just get through the deliberation and go? I try to encourage the judges to stay and high-five the teams. The teams have really worked hard to win those awards, and you know, it's really great whenever they can come out there and see 12 judges all lined up to high-five them. You know, the doctors and teachers and engineers and project managers and all those guys are out there high-fiving these kids, and it's pretty important to them as an award and recognition for the hard work that they've done. So do your best to encourage the judges to stay for the award ceremony. Obviously, there's times that they can't, but you know, you don't have to let the judges know that. Just tell them that they have to stay. As soon as the award ceremony is over, you need to return the rubrics to the teams. This is the responsibility of the judge advisor to get those rubrics back to the teams at the end of the competition. Work with the tournament director to figure out the exact logistics of how that happens. The best way to make it happen is for you to walk out of that deliberation room with all the rubrics sorted by team number, so that you can just, as the teams are getting ready to leave, they can come by and you can just hand them the packet of their rubrics. Those rubrics are important to the teams. They really have to get back into the team's hands, because those teams, if they need a lot of improvement, that should be represented in the notes that the judges wrote. If they did really well, that also should be represented in the notes that the judges wrote. So those rubrics getting back to the team are really important, and it's your responsibility as judge advisor to get them back to the teams at that competition. For whatever reason that set of rubrics don't get picked up by the teams, then those leftovers can be handed to the tournament director, and then they go through the process of getting them back to the teams. If all goes well, by 4 o'clock, you're going home. This is a big improvement over previous years where tournaments can drag on beyond 4 o'clock. We've done really hard to try to work with our process and schedules this year to get you out of there by 4 o'clock. It's a lot easier to tell somebody that woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning to get there by 7 that they'll be done and out of there by 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
So let me add something to this. We had a tournament yesterday, 28 teams. We started at 9 o'clock. We had 2 sets of judges, and we were done by 3:30.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's possible.
It's really a lot easier to encourage judges to stick around for the high-five ceremonies if it's not 6 o'clock in the evening. So getting them out of there early, that's kind of out of respect to the judges and their time and the other volunteers at that tournament. We really want to make sure that we try to stay on schedule. Okay, judge advisors, things to check in the morning whenever you first get there. Check your judging room and deliberation space. Each team should have their own separate judging room. It's really hard to interview a team whenever 2 sets of core value judges are sharing a room. There may be tournaments that are tight on space. It's really disheartening whenever that space is taken from the judges, because the judging process is a very important part of the tournament, and the judges need their room to be able to interview their teams appropriately. Okay, so check your judging rooms. Make sure that there's a table, there's 2 chairs for your judges, they have water, there's enough room in there to get a team inside. Especially for the project judges, they need space for the teams to do their presentation. For the robot design judges, make sure that there's a table in the room, that they have a field setup kit on that table, that it's set up and ready to go for the judges. The worst thing for robot design judges is to walk into their judging room and find a table and a rolled up mat and a kit that's still in the box. It's like, that does a judge no good. So if you walk in at 7 o'clock in the morning and you see a room like that, get a judge assistant in there to get it set up and making sure it's ready for the judges, or find some other volunteers. You may have to be flexible if the facility does not have enough space. All right, I say it's really important that the judges have their space, but if you're in a building that only has two 2 rooms for the judges and 1 big space for the judging, the robot design judges, or maybe they have to share a table between them because they just couldn't come up with that extra table for that second judging room. Work with them, be flexible, but make sure your judges have the space that they need to judge the teams, and that the teams have the space they need to adequately express their information to the judges. It's really important. And the teams get this one shot at championship, and they deserve the best shot that they can get. Make sure that there's enough rubrics for each team that the judges will interview. So if you've got 24 teams at the tournament, there better be at least 24 sets of rubrics for the judges, okay? Because the judges have to fill out a rubric for each team. And that's a rubric for core values, rubric for project, and rubric for robot design. Let's see, I've already talked about the table with the mission models. Another important room for the judges is the judges' room where the deliberation takes place. This has to be private. It can't be public. It can't be shared with the volunteer room. You cannot do your judges' deliberations in the volunteer room. It just does not work. It's not fair to the judges. It's not fair to the teams. So if the tournament director doesn't have a space set aside, a private space for deliberation, tell them they need to get you one. Or worst case, you can always go back into a project judges room or a robot design room and use that. Space is going to be tight, but if it's better to have a tight space than it is to be trying to deliberate in the volunteer room. Deliberating anywhere that's not private kind of violates that rule that says what happens in the judging room stays in the judging room, because now you're going to have people that are not part of the judging process watching as the deliberations take place, and that's just not appropriate. Make sure you meet with your judging assistants and decide how they will be used. Typically, the tournament director will have enough judging assistants, and usually their job is to make sure that the teams are at the judging room in time for their judging sessions. And that's a great use for the judging assistants. They get the teams there whenever they need to be there. That way the judges can kind of stay inside their room, and all they can do is have teams coming in, teams go out, and they're doing their interview process. The judge assistants should also be aware of, make sure that the judges have enough water in the room, they got the rubrics that they need. If there's anything that the judge needs, they should be able to turn to their judge assistant and say, hey, can you go get the tournament director? We got this issue here we need to discuss. Or can you go get the judge advisor? We got some kind of problem we got to deal with. So your judge assistants are there to help the judges process go smoothly and also help the teams get to the judging process on time. You're going to have to make a decision whether you're going to do manual deliberation or use the deliberation software. I would encourage you to use the deliberation software, but I got to say that it requires you to have a computer that can run Excel and a projector to be able to project it for the judges to see. Okay, tournament directors know about this. They should be able to provide at least a projector and a screen. If you have a laptop that you can bring with you that runs Excel, that increases your chances of being able to use the deliberation software. I've never used the deliberation software myself because I've always judged in the SoCal region, and they never did use that deliberation software, but I've run it several times since Tony introduced me to it, and it looks great, and I think it's going to be a great asset and tool for judge advisors. And finally, make sure that there's at least one adult in the judges room and that all judges must be 18 years or older. I told you my caveats earlier about I'm not going to stop a tournament because you're going to stick a 17-year-old in a room. But let's try to get the best judges that we can into that room. They're ambassadors for their STEM careers. They're ambassadors for the kids. And those are the kind of judges we want in the judging room. Things to ask the tournament director, ask what awards are being given. So for 24 teams, you'll have 2 champions, 2 core values, 2 robot design, 2 project, 2 judges award. 12 teams, you'll have 1 of each. Make sure that there's no special awards, and I'm not even going to go there because that probably won't happen, but special awards that a tournament might give out, I don't think that's going to happen. Talk to the tournament director, make sure you know how many teams need to advance to championship. Here's some guidelines. Later on, I've got another slide that actually details out the numbers. Core values activity, it's the responsibility of the tournament director to have a core values activity, but I would strongly encourage you to talk with your tournament director ahead of time and make sure that a activity is present and everything that you need to use is going to be available, and that you understand the core values activity. The purpose of the core values activity is to watch teams in action, how they make decisions, how they quickly decide things, how they work together, how well they respect each other, how they manage their time. Okay, that's the purpose of the core values activity. It doesn't have to be cute. It doesn't have to be creative. It has to get those points across to the core values judges. It's a tool for the core values judges to use to evaluate teams, and keep that in mind. And make sure that the core value activity that the tournament directors come up with will help your core values judges get their rubrics evaluated properly. Okay, you can go back and forth with the tournament director, say, hey, maybe we can do this for a core values activity. Just work with them and come up with a good core values activity. Ultimately, they should have one ready to go for you. You may want to bring a backup just in case the tournament director doesn't have something ready for you to go with. Your tournament director should provide you with a list of judges for the day. This is another thing that would be great to have in advance. Excuse me a second. This would be another thing that would be great to have in advance, a list of the judges, in case you need to contact the judges for whatever reason. Sorry about that. Go back. Ask that the tournament director deliver the lunch for the judges to the deliberation room. They may have it set up so that all the lunch is done in the volunteer room, but something new this year, we're kind of trying to make the lunch a working lunch for the judges. It'd be great if they could have their lunch in the judging room so that they can work on ranking their teams while they're eating lunch. Make sure that you set the parents, coaches, and the judging room policy with the tournament director. I went to Lancaster last year, and the entire parents and coaches were allowed in the judging room, and I thought that was really cool. This is the first time I've ever seen that done, and then I got to think about it afterwards. And as a judge, I kind of like only limiting it to just one coach that might be filming the activity. It's better to keep it limited on the number of people in the judging room. That gives the kids won't be distracted by other people in the room. They may be more at ease without their parents watching them for whatever reason. So it's really up to the tournament director and the judge advisor to decide that policy for that tournament. I would encourage you to limit to a single a single coach with a camera. Be allowed in the room. Other than that, just keep it to the kids. But for whatever reason, the coach must not distract or interact with the team. At that point, they're not a coach. Once the kids get into the judging room, they're no longer a coach. They can't be coaching the team. They can't talk to the team. They can't do hand signals. They can't clear their throats whenever the teams get stuck, whatever. They should not interact with the team. And your judges can tell that coach to leave the room, and that coach needs to leave the room. So the judges manage that judging room whenever they're in it, and pretty much what they have, they are in control of the room. They can ask the coach to leave if it becomes a problem. Now it's also up to the judges to decide if a coach does interact with the team while they're in there, how that's going to affect their judging process. We try not to punish the teams based on the action of an adult or a coach that's with the team. So it's better to ask the coach to leave the room and continue on with the judging process. the team is already penalized at some point, in some sense, by that action, because you've taken away from their 10 minutes that they have to relay information to you. So that they've already been punished at some level because their coach had to be, you have to stop and ask the coach to leave. Again, I'm going to kind of fall back on my experiences. Very few times have I had problems with a single coach or two coaches in the room. These coaches know that they've seen the core values, that the kids do the work. They know that the kids are supposed to be the ones doing the work. They know that they're not supposed to interfere. And almost every time that they'll follow by those rules because they want their kids to do well in the judging process. Okay, but they always have to be prepared for that exception and know how to handle it. Also talk to your tournament director about how the award ceremony will be performed. Are the judges going to come out and high-five the teams? Where are the judges going to line up? Is the judge advisor going to be announcing the awards? Is the tournament director going to be announcing the awards? Whatever. Just make sure that you know the logistics behind the award ceremony. And I want to strongly emphasize, and re-emphasize and overemphasize that there can be no communication with the judges by anyone but the teams during the interview and the judge advisor. Please do not let coaches talk to the judges during that judging process, from opening ceremony through the award high five. The judges are off limit to coaches. They're off limits to tournament directors. They're off limits to parents, because we really want to keep that judging process, we really want to keep the integrity of that judging process, and we don't want anything to interfere with that judging process. And the judge advisor is there to manage that judging process with the judges, and that should be the sole connection with the outside world for those judges, is you guys as judge advisors. In the project judging room, there, we kind of went over it with during the judging training. The project judging room is a little bit different than the other judging rooms, in that they have the teams have a well-defined 5 minutes for doing their presentation and a 5-minute Q&A, and that 5 minutes starts whenever the team enters the room. If they have to do any kind of setup for their presentation, that all comes out of their 5 minutes for the presentation process. So typically what I advise my project judges to do is, when the judges come in, or when the kids come into the judging room, the door closes, you say, welcome, team number 26 RoboChimps, your 5 minutes begins now. So it's, the judges make the call whenever that 5 minutes starts. They can start setting up their presentation at that point. They go through their 5 minutes, and then at the end of 5 minutes, I don't tell them to just, like, at the end of 5 minutes go, time's up, stop talking. You got it. If they're making a point, let them finish the point, but don't let them go 10, 20, 30 seconds, an extra minute beyond that 5 minutes. Just let them finish their sentence and say, okay, thank you very much, your 5 minutes are up, now we get some questions for you. So just keep it positive. All right, advancing teams. Here's the list of competitions, and this is straight off the FLL website. As judge advisors, make sure you check the website before you go to the competition, and also make sure you double check with your tournament director how many teams are going to be advancing to championships. This is all based on the number of teams that are attending each tournament. The judging process, the judges will be working in teams of 2. They get 10 minutes with each team and 10 minutes between the teams to add comments to the rubrics. Again, we're very strict on the 10 minutes with the teams. The teams get 10 minutes with the judges, period. If you're running behind schedule, you eat into the 10 minutes that the judges have to write on the rubrics. The judges are trained, in our judge training, we tell judges that they must stay on time. Whenever you talk to them in the morning, you must tell them they must stay on time. Don't let the team stay in the room for 11 minutes, because you lose one of your minutes to write comments. And after the first team or two, they'll realize that they want those full 10 minutes to write comments because it goes really quick. So encourage judges to judging teams to stay on time. 10 minutes with the team, that's not possible to change that. And up to 10 minutes between teams to comment on rubrics. And the judges must include constructive comments on rubrics. There's no reason in the world why a rubric should go back to a team with no comments. I don't like to be really strict and say you have to have a comment in every single box on there, because you got to make sure that your comments are constructive and there's a reason why you're making the comment. Don't just comment to make a comment, but they need to be positive. They need to encourage the teams. They need to tell the teams where they need help, they need work. They need to tell the teams where they're doing good. Right? It's the judge's way of communicating back to the teams how well they did in the judging process. Also, make sure to let your judges know that they got to take good notes during the interview because they'll be advocating for those teams whenever it comes to the deliberation process. So those notes should include the team number and team name, and facts that you can facts and notes that you make during the interview process. Let them know that after seeing 12 teams, that first team that they see in the morning is going to be a long gone, distant memory, and if they don't have good notes, they won't be able to advocate for that team appropriately. They should your judges should ask open-ended questions relevant to the rubric. You have 10 minutes with the teams. The teams have a lot of information to convey to you. You have a lot of information to extract from those teams, and if it's not done effectively, you're going to miss out on information. So asking open-ended questions lets teams kind of like guide the discussion to where they feel it needs to go, and your judges can kind of develop questions based on where they see the team going or whatever, but it's a 10-minute interview process. It has to be efficient, and you have to get a lot of information exchanged. Your judges should rank the teams after each interview. We've trained the judges to use both either a tick mark method or a sorting method, but we've given them a couple ways of sorting of ranking their teams. I believe we go over it. Yeah, so we go over it a little bit here too. Again, I emphasize stay on time. It's very important to keeping the whole process of a tournament going. Your judges can guide the conversation if necessary to keep the conversation flowing. If you've gotten the point that the team's trying to make, let them know that so that they can move on to another point. You can ask them another question to increase that flow of information. It's very important that you have a very efficient flow of information back and forth between the team and the judges. And this applies to judges and judge advisors and anybody else that might be in a judging room. What happens in the judging room stays in the judging room. And make sure that the judges are not, walking back and forth to the bathroom talking about teams that they've interviewed, because invariably somebody's going to overhear them, and it's just there's no reason for that to happen. Judge advisors, let your judges know what the policy is for having people in the judging room. Also let your judge assistants know that as well. That way the judges and the judging assistants can help manage the process of who's going to be in that judging room. If it was a policy last year of the LA region to let everybody into the judging room, and this year we're being a little bit more strict, you may have a team that last year that had everybody in the judging room. They want to do it again this year. If that's not the policy that you set, make sure that the team knows, or make sure that the judges know that they need to enforce whatever policy is set at that tournament. If the policy is only one coach is allowed in the judging room, then the judges need to let anybody that comes to that door know that there's only one coach allowed in the judging room. Keep it gracious and make sure your judges know to be gracious and professional. The last thing we want to hear about is a judge losing their temper with a team, or saying something inappropriate or cutting a team off while they're trying to talk. It should all be kept very professional with the teams, very encouraging, very positive. We really want the team to have a good experience with their judges.
Can I add something to this, Rick, just
Sure.
quickly? some of the judges that we recruited to some tournaments are engineers, and sometimes the kids present something that is technical in nature, and then the judges start bombarding them with very technical questions. So we need to kind of let the judges know that, they're dealing with, 10-year-old kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no need to debate the benefits of object-oriented programming with the kids whenever they come into the robot design room. Yeah. Keep remember. I guess I always fall back on efficient flow of information. There's things on that rubric that you need to know and that teams need to tell you, and getting into a technical debate with the team on their 10 minutes, on their dime, it's not very fair to the team. So keep it relevant to the rubric. That's very good advice. Thanks, Tony. Make sure all the judges have a timekeeping device. Obviously, you're not going to come in there with 10 cell phones to give each judging pair a timekeeping device, but make sure everybody has cell phones nowadays. They should be able to download an app that they can use to time the team to keep them on their 10 minutes. I just looked at the time, and I need my own timekeeping device because we're already past 5 o'clock, and I really apologize for this. 2 methods of ranking teams. You can either use a tick method. You see it over here. There's really good instructions that you can download. You'll all be getting a copy of this presentation, so you have the links to the instructions in the form. And there's also a sorting method of ranking teams. It's very similar to the tick method. Basically, what you're doing is as you go through the judging process, the first team you see is going to be your number 1 ranked team because they're the only team you've seen so far. So they either get 1 tick or they go to the top of the pile. Second team that you evaluate, they're either going to be number 1 or number 2. Okay, so if they're number 2, it's simple. They get 2 tick marks or they go to the second place in the pile. If they're number 1, you give them 1 tick mark. You give the other team a 2nd tick mark. Or if you use the ranking method, you put them on top of the pile, and what was the first place team goes to the second place in the pile. So as you go through the interviewing process, you're ranking every team as you see them relative to the teams before you, and that way, by the end of the judging process, the interview process, you'll have either a stack of rubrics that have already been sorted in order by rank, or you'll have a sheet of paper that has tick marks that show you what the rank of those teams are.
So in each room, how deep should we go, Rick? In each judging room?
I would say, if you're getting beyond the top 6, 5 or 6, probably the top 5, if I know what my top 5 teams are, I may have 1 or 2 of those advance on the champion, and I may have to go back to the next 2. So usually once you get beyond 4 and 5, they all kind of like, you're gonna see teams like striate, right? So you'll have really good teams, you'll have really bad teams, and you'll have a couple teams in the middle. So if you those 3 or 4 that are really good, if you get those ranked really well, and all the rest of them kind of like you have your middle teams, and then the bottom 50%. It doesn't really matter how you rank them, and a lot of times it'll be hard to rank them anyways because they'll all be like, there's really nothing that distinguishes one from the other.
Yeah, yesterday we did top 3, and it worked really well. However, we had the same team showed up on other lists, and that's when it becomes, maybe we need to go a little deeper than 3.
Yeah. Yeah, if I have my top 5 teams identified, I'm pretty safe, I think.
Okay.
All right. Let's see, core values activity. They're designed. These are short challenges that are given to the kids that are designed to help the core values judges evaluate those teams for the core values rubrics. You're really looking at to see how the teams communicate, how they work together as a team, how they manage their time, how they solve problems. Some simple core values activities. The easiest ones I found is you give them a bucket of Legos and you say, build your favorite core value. Imagine how abstract that is, and a team of 10-year-olds has to come up with a way to build. They've got to figure out what their favorite core value activity is, make a decision as a team, and figure out how to build that with Legos and find the Lego pieces and get it done in 3 minutes. So it really puts the kids under pressure to see, so you see how well they work as a team and how they solve difficult problems. And there is no right or wrong answers. At the end of it, you're just observing the process. That's the best part about it. There's many core values activities that can be done. The tournament director should have one planned for you. On the Google Plus site for the LA FLL, Jenny's done a good job of listing out some core values activities ideas. Deliberation process. Make sure that your judges are sorting their rubrics during the judging process. It's going to make your life a lot easier whenever you come back at lunchtime and you gotta rank sort all those all 24 teams into order from top to bottom. During lunch, that's what you're going to have each judging team do. So if you have 4 core values judges, you're going to sit them together at lunch, and you're going to tell them at the end of lunch, I want you to have a stack of rubrics that are ranked from top to bottom. Make sure you have your top 6 teams identified for sure, maybe a couple extra spares if you can, and anything that's below the rank of 7 or 8, don't spend a whole lot of time on those. And encourage them to get that done during lunch, and by the end of lunch, have them all ranked together. It gives them something to do during lunch. It's a great icebreaker for the judges. They get to talk to each other about some areas that they have in common, so it's kind of a great way to get through lunch. Anyways, you're gonna list the top 16. This is kind of describing the manual deliberation process, and I'm going to show you the software too real quick. List the top 6 teams in each area looking for potential champions. The champions should be pretty easy to identify your champions because they're going to rank high in all 3 categories. The judge advisor's worst nightmare is whenever you get all the teams distributed evenly across all the areas and you have no teams float to the top in all 3 areas, or if you have teams that rank high in 2 areas, but they did really well in core values and robot design, but ended up last place in project. Then it becomes a little bit harder to identify those champion teams. I've only been to one tournament where I had trouble identifying champions teams. All the other tournaments I've done, it's usually pretty obvious the top couple teams that are floating to the top in all areas. You need to wait for the final scores to be announced. During this time, it's a great time to sort your rubrics by teams so that you can distribute them after the award ceremony. By the time you get the top 6 teams identified in each category, you're pretty much done with rubrics, and they can be sorted by teams and prepared for handing back to the teams. Once the final scores are announced, take a look at your champion candidates. Make sure that they end up in the top 40% of the performance scores. So if you have 24 teams, it's going to be the top 9 teams, 10 teams. So they have to be ranked in positions 1 through 10 on the robot performance scores. Just do the quick math and multiply number of teams by 40%, and always round up in that case. Once you've identified the champions, that may open up some holes in your category awards, robot design project core values. So make sure to fill in those holes by picking the next highest ranked teams out of your list. That's why you select 6, so that you have a nice deep field to pick from. Then you need to select the teams that are advancing from champions. These teams are going to be also have to be in the top 40% of performers, and these are going to be you want well-rounded teams to advance the championship. So by definition, the champions are well-rounded teams. They are ranked high in all 3 judge categories, and they ranked high in robot performance. So by definition, a champion team is very likely to advance to the championship. There may be cases where a team can't go for what reason. Our team's going to be out of the country in December 12th or 13th, so we can't go. There's a case where a champion team would not advance the championship. You'd have to pick somebody else. Okay, but that's I have to go to some extremes to come up with examples for that. Also, you're very likely the teams that are winning awards are also going to be those kind of teams that you're going to want to advance. But just because a team has not won an award a team does not have to win an award in order to advance the championship. You're going to have teams that have not won awards that are in the top 40% that will advance champions to the championship. record all the winners and advancing teams and deliver that information to the tournament director. Write it down on a piece of paper and get it over to them. Team name, team number, what award that they've been awarded. Okay, and then the list of teams that will advance the championship. Using the deliberation software, I think I'm just going to do a demo. It's a lot easier to do it that way. So whenever this is software, I think I have, I don't have the link to it. I will make sure that link is included in email to all the judge advisors. It runs in Excel, so you need a computer that can run Excel, and it's best if it's projected onto a screen so that the judges in the judging room can see what you're doing. So I suppose you can get away with the judges gathering around behind you and looking over your shoulder if you don't have a projector. So first thing that you're going to do is make sure that you put on all your teams, team number, team names. You can do that in the morning while your judges are doing their interviews. The rest of these fields will be blank at the beginning, so there won't be any robot design, there won't be any rankings, there won't be any scores. All the gray areas you do not touch, so don't, just like it says here, don't make changes to the gray columns. After lunch, you now have each of your categories. The judges have ranked their rubrics in order, so you want to list out the top 5, 6 of, the top 6 teams in ranked order. So, for example, the Harry Potters are number 1 in robot design. BattleBots is number 2. You can see that there's a whole bunch of 7s. That's because beyond 6, we really don't care about the rankings as much, because they're probably not going to be a candidate for an award. Okay, so we've picked the top 6 by rank for robot design, project, and core values. So you can fill all that in after they've ranked their teams during lunch. Have somebody help you, one of the judges help you, or pick somebody from the robot design group and have them help you identify what the numbers are so that you can type it in. As the teams finish their competition rounds, you can enter their high scores in this column, and then you can go to the deliberation tab and press trophy winners, and this will all fill in. You need to decide how many you're going to have in each rank, so that really depends on how many teams are at the tournament. So let's say for a 2014 tournament, we'll have first and second place for each category. If we had a 12-team tournament, that would be a 1, because we give out 1 award for each category.
Before you do that, Rick, you need to click on Reset the Form.
Okay.
To clear what's in there.
Okay, so
now you can do the trophy winners.
So this is what it'll look like. So the form's all reset. And if I click on trophy winners, I've got first and second place for each award category. If I click OK, what would have taken an hour with a whiteboard and markers and deliberation with the judges, you can see it's just done there like instantaneously for you. It's identified that Harry Potters and Cold Cut Killers are the Champions Award, because you see them ranking high in each of the different areas. They've also ranked within the top 40% on robot performance. As a matter of fact, Cold Cut Killers was number 1. It's taking them out. Since they won the Champions Award, they can't win the robot design or core values or project because we spread the wealth. So it's picked the next highest: BattleBots, Robot Chicken for robot design, Lemonheads, Cyber Eagles, Electric Pickles, Ballistic Bananas. So this has done the work. This has taken a lot of the work that the judge advisors and the judges used to have to do during deliberation, and automate it with algorithms. And they're pretty good algorithms. They're pretty accurate, and they come up with pretty good decisions. You do always have the ability to say, it said that BattleBots was the number 1 robot design after everything else has been decided. You do have the ability to override that if you need to. If for whatever reason, you thought BattleBots should have been number 1 on project, for example, instead of robot design, you can go back and just do a human check of this, make sure everything looks good, and and that and all the judges are comfortable with the decisions that the program's made. Okay, but if you've been a judge advisor before, you can very quickly see the value of this program and how it's going to make your life a lot easier. Okay. So these are just I just kind of listed out the steps that we just talked about here. All right, what do you do if you have a too close to call? Sometimes there's teams that are too close to call. Who should be ranked higher? This is really going to probably happen like during lunchtime. If you have your two sets of core values judges and they're trying to pick who's number one, you know, maybe you're really having trouble. They both insist that their number one team is number one. You can always ask those judges to go back out and re-interview the teams out in the pits. This is something that's kind of new. Before, we've always done, we've either used callbacks or just, you know, worked it out with the judges. But, you know, we're still going to ask the judges to try to work it out themselves, right? You know, just say, if the judges are having a hard time making a decision, as a judge advisor, go to them and say, you know, go back to your notes, look at your notes. You know, is this team really exemplary in all these categories of core values, or are you giving them the, you know, are you being easy on them or whatever? You know, try to get the judges to solve it if you can. If you can't, then it's okay to tell the judges to go back out and talk to the teams in the pits. What I would do is send out the judges to talk to the team that they did not interview. They should go talk to the other team, and then come back in and give them, you know, time box this process. Tell them you've got 5 minutes. Go out, talk to the teams, ask them some real quick questions, get a feel for them, come back in here, and then you guys have to make a decision. Okay, you don't want them to. You don't want to have to. You don't want to get down to this third bullet point if you can avoid it. But if there's no way to avoid it, just make sure that they have a time limit on getting this thing resolved. All right. Let's see. I did put a slide in here about callbacks just for completeness. This is another method of using handling the too close to call kind of things, and we may use this at the championship. I don't know. We haven't really decided that yet. But I know in SoCal we did this at the championship all the time. And with callbacks, what you do is each judging group identifies one or two of their top teams, and those teams come for a callback. And in that case, they come back to the judging rooms, and the entire set of judges for that area interview them. So all 4 core values judges re-interview the top 4 core values teams or whatever. And then they would have a second set of rubrics filled out, and you would use this information to help identify, you know, the top teams in that area. Be aware that just because a team does not get a callback doesn't mean that they're not going to get an award. It's always possible that there may still be a good team that ends up getting an award even though they didn't get a callback. The drawbacks of the callback process is it takes a lot of extra time to organize the callbacks. It takes extra judging times. It takes time away from the deliberation, and it's going to extend the amount of time for the tournament. That's why at qualifying tournaments we are not using callbacks. So just be aware of that, that the callbacks will not be used at qualifying tournaments. We don't have qualifying tournaments that are big enough to worry about callbacks at this point. Okay. Rubric basics. Make sure that your judges know that if they're going to mark a team as exemplary, they better meet whatever words are used in the description of exemplary. If it says all, always, every, you know, the words like that are used, then they must stick to those words. Those are words put in there for a reason. And if all team members must do something in order to get exemplary, then you need to make sure that all team members do that in order to rank them as exemplary. A lot of times, first-time judges, they've never experienced kids of this caliber coming and talking to them in the ways that our FLL kids know how to talk to judges, and they're going to be blown away by the caliber of the kids, and they're going to think that every team is exemplary. just make sure that you emphasize that to the judges that they've really got to meet these criteria if they're going to be marked exemplary. Okay, that's it for judge advisors. Ty and group, or Tony, is there any questions?
No, we're doing great, Rick. You did a great job again. Thank you very much. You were thorough.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry for keeping you guys a half hour past what I thought was going to go. This is the first time I've done the training, so I'm sort of a bit surprised that we got done in 2.5 hours.
Yeah, I'm actually it's a great idea to have this. Ooh, how much echo?
Well, I appreciate it, Rick. We learned a lot, and my judge advisor and I have a list of notes that we're going to be attacking, starting tomorrow. So I really appreciate you bringing those things to light. It helps a lot. Thank you.
No problem at all. And you guys have my email, so I'm available between now and mid-December. If you guys have any questions, we'll either get them answered or we'll get it figured out.
Thank you very much, Rick. Really appreciate it.
You bet. No problem.
Sounds like a plan. Thanks, Rick.
We'll talk to you guys later. Bye.
Bye.